I know y'all are probably sitting there thinking, girl, what happened to your fancy backdrop? What happened to your fancy lighting? Well, I am still in Tennessee, so my fancy backdrop and my fancy lighting is back in Virginia. So I had some videos, very obviously a review I wanted to do for you guys sooner rather than later. So we are just working with what we have, and I'm kind of not hating the weathered brick wall look. Comment down below if I should redo my whole downstairs apartment area in weathered brick. But if you could not tell by the eyeshadow colors on my eyes, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Kat Von D and Divine eyeshadow palette. I remember this was teased like 5 months ago. I don't know. They've been teasing things earlier and earlier and earlier, a year before it launches, and I was like, ooh, I'm a Kat Von D fan. Ooh, I like drag queens. Ooh, Pink Flamingos is a niche market. I kind of needed to have it. This palette is $38, available on the Kat Von D site, which is where I got it. It is a limited edition, and you are getting 8 shades that are 1.7 grams of product each. That is the exact same as the Pastel Goth palette. This is the same size, whatever, and the same eyeshadow format going on here as the Pastel Goth. The mirror has this, can I even show it to you guys, that like freaking blinding, there we go, has this really cool, crazy, like eyebrows going on here. Absolutely love that. Palette is beautiful aesthetically. However, opening this palette up, on the first look, I will admit that this looks like a one-trick pony palette. It looks like a smoky eyeshadow palette with some pops of color. Now, hey, that's okay. That's okay. If that's your jam every day, you do you, honey. I am wearing waters all over my lid today. Then I took this shade Baltimore, did it in the crease to give it that more dramatic look. I took Female Trouble. That was my highlighting shade here. This is my Babs, is my inner corner highlight. And then Pink Flamingos is under the waterline. Not mad at the look I created, but let's get into swatching this and then talking about my overall feelings on the palette. Now, because I'm not in my usual setup, we are going to have to just do it kind of like we did before. I love you all. Thank you for staying with me. And let's just dig into this. I'm going to start with the shade Babs here, which I do absolutely love this shade right here. It is very reminiscent to her Metal Crush formula, and it's very metallic and foiled. And this almost looks like a more golden version of her shade in that Thunderstruck. Next, we have Hard Magic right here, which is just Kat Von D black. You know, oh boy, I always live for her blacks. They don't ever swatch the best, but they always perform phenomenally. And I found that this is just as good as any of her other dark mattes, black, whatever. I've got to be wiping down everything because it's like nasty. Next, we have the shade Baltimore right here. Now, I will say that although this shade is quite beautiful, if you don't use a very like densely packed brush, you aren't going to be able to get a lot of payoff on this shade. And I have noticed that it is a bit like the pan. It's weird. It's developing like a shimmer hard pan, so it's not as easy to pick up the product as when I first got the palette. So I'm not sure what that's all about, because usually Kat Von D's shimmers or just all her eyeshadows are top notch, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Then we have the shade Waters here, which is pretty much identical to the blue in the Pastel Goth palette, which I thought was kind of a cop out, but oh well. The swatch here isn't doing this one nearly enough justice. It is a lot more pigmented on the eyes than that, but it is very beautiful. Then we have the shade Filthy right here, which is super smooth, very pigmented, and this is just perfect for smoking out that lower lash line. I have used this one in the outer V and to deepen up my crease, like really deepen up my crease, and it has worked phenomenally. This is definitely, although maybe not in color, this performance-wise is a standout shade. Then we have Pink Flamingos right here, which I think is kind of funny because I'm like, Pink Flamingos, pink, and it's green. It's the aesthetic of the film. You all know. And then we have this one right here going on there. Once again, the swatch isn't really doing that one justice either. It is a lot more pigmented. It isn't like as crazy buttery as this shade right here, but it is really nice and on par with Kat Von D shimmers we've seen in the past. Next is the shade Female Trouble, which is just white. I mean, this shade was also in the Pastel Goth palette. I mean, it's a white shade. It's Kat Von D's whites are some of the best that I've ever used, and I can understand why they would include this in the palette to kind of create that really dramatic depth and definition that we see so often in drag queen makeup. So, I mean, it's white. And then last but not least is this beautiful hairspray color. Now, compared to the other shimmers, it is the like roughest to the touch, but it is so beautiful and so unique. There it is right there on the top, kind of blending in with the first shade I did. But the consistency is like a very thin, almost glossy texture, kind of like her Metal Crush highlighter palette formula. And this makes a beautiful highlight. It's a great topper. This is just a phenomenal shade that I think is a major standout in the palette. So, all in all, these shades perform fairly well according to Kat Von D standards. I do find that the shade Baltimore and Pink Flamingos do create some sort of shimmery hard pan, which is really weird. I've never experienced that before, especially not in a Kat Von D product. Some shades are repeated in other things we've seen before. Kat Von D has a black in any and all of her palettes. This shade Pastel Goth, this shade Pastel Goth, these two shades pretty much you could find them in the Vida Loca remix palette. Basically, the quality is okay. I'm not super happy about the hard pan, whatever going on here. The other shades are very beautiful. The only problem I have is this Baltimore shade, which I used right all up in here. Is usually Kat Von D's shimmers I'm able to take and put them in the crease anywhere I want, and they will blend out beautifully. This one I found it a little bit difficult to pack on the color and blend out seamlessly. It was a little bit patchy, which I understand. I am not a makeup artist. I don't have the experience of Jaclyn Hill, Manny MUA, blah, 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 blah. But I know me how to do some eyeshadow, and I know Kat Von D. So that was a little bit like, I mean, honestly, this palette really is what it looks like. It is a smoky palette with some pops of color. I do think that the shade Babs and Hairspray are the two really standout unique shades, even more so than these ones, because the texture and the finish that they give is just absolutely beautiful. And I'm just gonna come out right out and say it. If there is a Kat Von D palette that I would say pass on, it would be this one. Just because it isn't anything crazy, super unique, unless you are a Kat Von D collector. I mean, I feel like that's a cop-out with any brand. But if you really enjoy Divine, you know, her work and the movie Pink Flamingos and kind of that aesthetic going on, this is a wonderful piece to have to kind of relive that nostalgia. It can create some beautiful looks, but this isn't a palette that you're going to be able to get 50 million things from. And the shades in it aren't anything that are like, yes, this is new, this is inventive, this is crazy. It is just a well-compiled palette with colors that fit aesthetically the film as well as the work that Divine has produced that we have seen. So it's just very, when you're dealing with a niche market and a niche film, there really isn't too many things you can do. But I think for collector purposes and things like that, it is a really good palette. But if you're just looking to purchase a Kat Von D palette, this is not the one. Go for another one, wait for another one. She will come out with something else. She's releasing that Lolita one that I'm like, I need that. Stop saying need, stop saying need. I really want it. So all in all, this palette is good, except for this shade. They all perform really well. It's just not something that we aren't reinventing the wheel here. It's really pretty. If you want it, get it. I would say wait for another Kat Von D palette, but if you're a big fan of Pink Flamingos and Divine, I would recommend picking this up. Well, there we have that, guys. It's a good palette. It's just kind of you know. It performs well, but this would definitely be makeup that falls under the just okay. It isn't anything phenomenal, but it isn't anything absolutely horrible either. Thank you guys so much for watching and sticking around through all of my craziness. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!